morning, good morning, and welcome. I am your host, Kim Davis. This Chalk Talk. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is the final Tuesday Chalk Talk of 2020. Now, I'll pop on and do a couple other videos before this week is out, but it's our final Tuesday show. So thank you for tuning in and joining. So we're going to talk some Rockets. I'm going to let you hear from James Harden and head coach Stephen Silas. They fell to the Denver Nuggets last night, 124 to 111. And we're also going to hear from Romeo Crennel, head coach of the Houston Texans, as the Texans get ready for their final game of the season. They will play host to the Tennessee Titans on Sunday at NRG Stadium, and it will put an end to a season that many of them would probably like to forget. And now the real work begins. Who will be the Texans general manager? I think we should start there. And I hope the Texans start there before they decide who's going to be the head coach, so that they can have an organization that is in sync and can work together, because the road ahead is going to be difficult. They have to make some decisions about their roster. The roster has some holes, there's some deficits, and they are without draft picks, thanks to the last guy who was in charge, Bill O'Brien, head coach, general manager, and all of that. So they don't have draft picks. They are cap heavy, they're up against it. So they're going to have a general manager that can come in and work some magic, in terms of tweaking this roster, figuring out who they have that they should keep, who should they move in terms of salary and commitment, and what really is going to be the plan moving forward, right? And who are they going to be? What is the identity of this team? Obviously, it starts with Deshaun Watson. I was listening to commentators in the game on Sunday, and they talked about J.J. Watt being the face of the Texans, and I would argue that while he has been the integral part of this team, that the face of the Texans is Deshaun Watson. He is the face and the future of this organization. And whatever decisions they make, it has to be built around what he has to do, what he can do, what he has to offer, which is a lot. And that is the path forward, in my opinion. JJ Watt, we see some glimpses of who he has been in his career, but JJ is 10 years in? And so while he can still be a part of the organization, he's not the future of this organization, just because of father time and the kind of toll that this game takes on your body. So it'll be interesting. The head work, the heavy lifting is ahead for this Houston Texans franchise. Good morning, Charles. Welcome, welcome. Happy almost end of the year. What am I going to say? Also, happy Ujamaa. If you are celebrating Kwanzaa, if you are not, I encourage you to do that. Ujamaa means cooperative economics. And so I'm doing a call every morning as a part of Kwanzaa to have a conversation about each of the principles. And my goal, my plan for 2021 is a couple of things. One, my word for 2021 is completion. It's time for me to finish some stuff. And it is to practice the principles of Kwanzaa every week in 2021. While we highlight the several principles, these 7 days of Kwanzaa at the end of the year, every year, they are principles that are worth carrying out throughout the entire year. So day 4 is today. It was Ujamaa, which stands for cooperative economics. And it's something that we really should all should all make a part of what we do, right? It's important to celebrate that. Absolutely. Happy Kwanzaa and Happy New Year, Charles. Same to you. And I want to thank you for always being a part of Chalk Talk and helping to share and spread the message that we are here. And so one of the things that I am working on, and something that we encourage in some of these conversations I've been a part of, it is to ask people for what you need, ask people to help you. And so what I say is help by spreading the idea of Chalk Talk, spreading the time and the schedule of Chalk Talk, so that we can have more people to join us. You know what? I'll make sure that I have this particular microphone on. So yeah, I'm encouraging you to share Let me go to here. Okay, there we go. I'm encouraging you to share Chalk Talk. Let people know where they can find it. Charles, you're very kind. You're very kind because I do have something to say, and I appreciate you guys being a part of the conversation, and also us moving this conversation forward, moving it beyond just the tribe that is here and follows us. Although, listen, I appreciate that. And one of the ways you can do is by sharing the video, right? And I don't prompt you guys enough to do that. And so I am going to do so. If you will share the video, you can follow Chalk Talk on YouTube and on Facebook. And I encourage you to do that. There we go. Please share the video so that we can continue to grow and have these conversations, and that we can have them with a larger audience, not to amplify me, but to amplify the conversations, right? Because they're necessary. It's really about the conversations and not as much about the host. I'm just guiding these conversations, and I take it, I'm excited to do so, but I take it seriously that you guys join me and are willing to listen. I said we're going to talk about something that was in the news recently and has been in the news a couple of times over the past 6 months. I want to talk about it today, and I'm going to talk about it moving forward on a regular basis, and this race in media. And I'm going to talk about why that's so important. But before we do that, I am going to talk about what's happening with these Houston Rockets, okay? So the Houston Rockets are 2 games in. They're 0-2 to start this young season. Hey, thank you, Tyrone. I appreciate it. You're very, very kind. The Rockets are 0-2 on this very young season. Of course, they have been playing shorthanded, right? Because they had some guys who were out because of COVID, testing positive, and also because of being in the proximity of others, and because of what they're doing in terms of contact tracing. So they only had 9 players to suit up. You have to have at least 8. Remember, they weren't able to play opening night last Wednesday against OKC because they only had 8. They didn't have 8, rather. So they have 9. They lost in overtime to Portland. That was a good game on Saturday night. They lost last night to Denver. Their next game is at home on New Year's Eve. They play the Kings at 6 p.m. and they should have everybody back. So that should be fun to watch, right? So last night, it was a tough loss, right? It was a tough loss. I'm going to pull up the box score. That's what I'm looking for. So in terms of, of course, James Harden did what James Harden does. He had 34 points in 31 minutes. Christian Wood had 23 points in 36 minutes. Nwaba started at guard forward. He had 14 points. And Daniel House finished with 6 points. Off the bench, they got Sterling Brown had 12 points. But again, you have, guys who were unavailable. We haven't seen John Wall yet. We haven't seen Boogie Cousins yet. We haven't seen Eric Gordon yet. We haven't seen Kendrick Martin. I mean, it's been a rough start. So in terms of what this team did, last night it was Denver's good, right? Denver's one of the teams that I think you can expect to see at the top. And I'm trying to give you the team numbers of what they shot last night. Here we go. So the Rockets shot 45% from the field. Denver shot 53%. It's tough to beat a team shooting over 50%. The turnovers, the Rockets turned the ball over 15 times, and they committed 25 fouls. Points in the paint, Denver won that stat. Denver won pretty much all of the stats. Bench points, fast break points were even, pretty much even. Points in the paint, The largest lead, Denver led by as many as 25 points. So it was pretty much a Nuggets game most of the night. The Rockets had a lead early by 4, but they just were shorthanded. And, they just were not able to, really, especially in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter, well, actually not in the fourth quarter. Their biggest deficit was really in the third quarter when they were outscored by 13. But in the fourth quarter, they fought back. They scored 20. They outscored Denver 28-18, but it wasn't enough, right? Denver still ended up with a win. Let's hear from head coach Stephen Silas after last night's game.
First question, Kelly Eco.
Hey, Coach, is it fair to say that tonight was just, just focus on the defensive end of the ball?
I wouldn't say we didn't focus on the defensive end of the ball. We obviously didn't play well on the defensive end of the ball. To me, it looked like a team that hasn't really been able to practice, and our defensive concepts that we talked about weren't necessarily adhered to enough, and they're a hard team to play. So this is this growing, learning experience for all of us, and we got to get better on the defensive end especially. But when you have 9 guys and you're kind of doing things on the fly because you don't have practice time, it can get ugly against a good team, and that's what happened tonight.
Jonathan Fagan.
Coach, how do you balance wanting to understand the circumstances? There's some fatigue and other issues, but not accepting some of the things that have to be corrected. Where do you come down or find the balance between those two things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a hard one. We expect to play well. We expect to win. We don't expect to go out and have a performance like we did tonight. So we just have to learn from it, grow from it, and get better from it. And like I said, we have as you alluded to, there's a lot of other things that could or could not contribute to how we played tonight. But I choose to believe that we could have played better and should have played better.
Cody Davis.
Hey, Coach, with only 9 active players on the roster tonight, how much did altitude play in a factor in this loss?
I don't think it did. We played a bunch of minutes the other night. We had yesterday where we just watched film as a group. We did a little walkthrough this morning, and we were ready to go. So I don't think the altitude had much to do with it at all.
Kelly Eco.
Coach, how impressed have you been with Wood during his first 2 games as a starter?
I've been impressed. He's done a good job. He's still trying to find his way. And we got to just make sure that he's rolling at the right time, popping at the right time. He really started off good and hot, making those 3 threes early. But, he's got a little ways to go as well, and we all do. We have to figure out how it works for all of us to play well together. And that's my job, and we'll get it together.
That is Rockets head coach Stephen Silas. And, talk about having to play the hand that you're dealt, right? He came into this Houston Rockets team with 2 former MVPs and Russell Westbrook and James Harden, only to quickly find that Russell Westbrook would be leaving. And then, oh, by the way, James don't want to be here. So the drama of the James Harden off season, I'm going to call them antics because I think they were a bit of that. And then him coming in and then not being available in the first game, maybe because contact tracing and having to have several positive and negative tests since he had been out at a club of some sort celebrating his homegirl, according to him. And so this is how you start your tenure as a new head coach of the Houston Rockets. I think he has, I don't know, Stephen Silas, and because of COVID, I haven't had a chance to meet him in person. Just met him on, our Zoom interviews, and that's the interaction we've had. But, I think he's handled it as well as he could. And like you said, you got to play with who you have. You got 9 players. You got 9 players. You can't play because you only have 8 opening night. You can't play. And hopefully, if you see how this Rockets team has played and fared so far, they could be good. If James Harden wanted to be here and play, I mean, he's going to come out and give you the numbers that he gives you. I don't think anybody would question what James Harden gives you during the regular season, especially offensively. We know that he is one of the game's best offensive players, best scorers, right? He is that. There's no question about it. But can you win a championship with him? You follow me, my answer is I don't really think so. I'd love to be proven wrong because he's incredibly talented, but champions have a certain mindset. It's one of the things I talk about in one of my talks. It's called a championship mindset, and it's really, really important. It takes that to win championships. There's a book called Talent is Never Enough. And to me, that's what it's talking about. It's not talking about just that. It's really talking about perfecting or improving upon what you already do well on your strengths instead of working on your weaknesses. And to me, all of that, the thing that allows you to do that, that guides you to do that is a mindset, which is what champions operate under. Good morning, Luanda. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see you. Happy New Year, happy Kwanzaa. And Charles says, yeah, that says it all, shorthanded. So I'll let you hear from James Harden. He also did speak after the game last night. And let's hear from him.
We'll get first question, Jonathan Fagan.
James, are there things that you guys take from these two games to build on, or do you just feel like, no, that's not the actual team and the season starts Thursday?
Yeah, we take things, that we can build on. Defensive mistakes, we got to watch them as a group individually and just continue to get better, not make the same mistakes. A lot of guys had an opportunity the last two games to play minutes, big minutes. So, for those opportunities, you can't take advantage of. You got to take advantage of them. You can't take those for granted.
Kelly Iko.
James, speaking more about the defense, is that just more a product of time together, or is it just reps?
Both. We haven't really had any practices all together, and so hopefully we get a good practice on Wednesday and be ready to go Thursday.
Saman Ali.
Hey, James, what does getting half your team back and getting more practice in do for you guys as a team, just getting those reps in?
Everything. You need practice, you need reps, you need to drill things, you need to keep going over things, and just, instill them in our heads. So when we're out there on the games, we're not overthinking. We know where we're supposed to be defensively and offensively, and at that point, it's just execute.
Mark Berman.
That was
James, are there things that you guys?
Let me stop that. That was James Harden after the Rockets lost last night to Denver. Remember, this team is still playing shorthanded. They're playing with 9 players. Thursday night, when they play at home against the Kings, it'll be the first time they've had the entire team available for a game. And so, good morning, Kim. Good morning. Good to talk to you again. Welcome, welcome. Make sure you guys share the video, right? If you will, please share the video, whether you're watching it on YouTube or on Facebook. And Freddie has a good question. He says, do you think the Rockets, once they get these guys back, are they a playoff team? So if they get, let me rephrase that. When they get the guys back, and if James Harden is here, the current roster that they have, I think could be a playoff team. I think we're all waiting to find out if, in fact, James Harden will be dealt. I think really the question now is really, instead of if, it's really when and to who. Kim says, if I don't want to be here was a person. I know. That's a good one. So James Harden has made it clear he doesn't want to play for the Rockets. He wants to play someplace else. And what I will say is the way he's looked, especially in the first game, the second game, he's reminding people, oh yeah, this guy is really good he's really good when you have him on the court. I think that the questions, I've had people ask me, inbox me and say, well, do you think his behavior, him being, I think it was irresponsible for him to be running around and kicking at places with no mask and going against what the NBA says, is there protocol in terms of being eligible to play in this season? Do you think that's going to make a team not want him? And I say absolutely not. Look at some of the behavior of players who have found themselves on rosters if they're really talented, and he is really talented. I will say this. If I'm a team, it would matter to me, but I'm not an owner yet. Who knows, right? Maybe one day. But here's the thing that I think may matter more to NBA executives is if they say, okay, we know James Harden is incredibly talented. If we add him to what we're doing, how does that change the chemistry and the style of play? Because James certainly has a certain way that he plays. And this offense, this Houston team has really been built around him and his style for the past 8 years. And he has been able to really run and play the way he wants to play. If he goes someplace else, if he goes to a team that's a championship contender, it means a couple of things. That team has one or probably at least two superstars already, at least one, maybe two. And it means that they have a certain way of doing things. They have been doing things a certain way. Is James going to be able to fit in and not disrupt what they do while bringing the talent he has? I think that's a question that NBA teams are probably grappling with more than his behavior. Because let me tell you, teams and coaches always think, yeah, well, if he was here, he wouldn't act like that. We don't have to worry about that if he were here. Well, we'll see. I think grown people are grown people, and James is a grown man. I think he is who he is. And so whoever it is that brings him in is going to have to be able to, they're going to be making a decision saying, yes, we think we can integrate him into what we're doing. We think it'll be a fit. We think it will only take our team to the next level. I think those are the questions, right? James has to have the ball in his hand. He likes it. That's what he does. He slows down your offense a bit. And in terms of, what you're able to do with him on the floor, and is he at a place where things don't have to be his way? I don't know. I don't know him like that. I just know him from covering him over several years. But I think it's going to be an interesting time, if you will, with James Harden. But the Rockets are going to move him, unless he has some sort of epiphany and changes his mind. I think that they will move him. What he has done is hopefully made it easier for them to do so, because it does remind people like, oh yeah, this dude, he can play. Let me give you, let me make an offer that's real. One of the things that I found interesting was last week, he added, to his list of teams that he'd be willing to go to, Portland. And this is right before they went and played at Portland. Well, if Portland is a place he'd be willing to go, he's a two guard, he's a shooting guard. So you wouldn't, CJ McCollum, who's their starting two guard, you wouldn't have them both on a roster. So CJ was like, well, if he come here, then what does that mean for me? So CJ, I think, and Dame Lillard were clear about them as a duo, as a tandem, that they are right? That they are okay. So that's pretty interesting. Nora says, didn't he play with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook without winning a championship? He did. He did play with both of them, and they did not win a championship. He was with them early, and one of the teams one of the first teams that he was supposedly that was on his list of places he would go, his short list, is the Brooklyn Nets, where, of course, who's there? Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant didn't say, no, dude, leave me out of it. But he did say, oh, the media's basically, y'all dead wrong for reporting those stories. He never said, yeah, I would love to have him here. But I never thought that was a realistic option, because this Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the Nets did get to the bubble this past season without Durant and Kyrie. So why would you make up a huge change to your roster without seeing how what you have works? Like, there's no rush to do anything, especially before the trade deadline. I mean, give your team that you assembled last year that you thought would work a start. So yes, he did. And remember, Norris, good morning. I'm glad that you're joining us today. Russell Westbrook was here last year, right? They gave up a lot to get Russell. 2 years before that, they gave up a lot to bring in Chris Paul. And it was something that James wanted. It was a move that James wanted. So let's be really clear that the Rockets, while not a perfect organization, have given him basically what he's wanted. And oh yeah, they're paying him. And so I remind people that these relationships are transactional, right? Yeah, you say teams are like a family, but he wouldn't show up for that family without getting the big check he's getting. Hell, he didn't even want to show up when he was for the team with the big check he's getting. So it's a transactional relationship. You do your part and I pay you. And my part is that I pay you, right? That's what that means. And so this relationship is broken. And, now they basically said, we've done everything you've asked us to do. In the off season, apparently he was the one first, even before Russ said, well, I don't know if it's first. Let me not say that. But he clearly was ready to not play with Westbrook anymore. And from the reports, Russ was okay with that. And so they moved Westbrook. And now you still don't want to be here, right? So, Kim says, from my Zodiac expert, he is a Virgo, his way or no way. Absolutely. And so now he's saying, listen, I don't want to be here. But at least he realizes that the team's best chance of moving you, because they've also made it clear, we're not just going to give you up for nothing, is that remind people how good you are. James Harden can play, right? He can play. He's got a lot of talent, but if he doesn't want to be here, you can't make him settle into this and be anything other than he is. But even at an unhappy James Harden, as you can see from the numbers the first couple of nights, is more talent than a lot of people have. Freddie said, the thing is that's scary about the Rockets is James is a dominant player on this team and him wanting to go somewhere else. I think he knows he won't be a dominant player wherever he goes. Next, he has reached that reality at this point. I don't know, Freddie. He has reached that reality. Hang on a second. At this point in his career, I'm not sure that I would say that that's the case with him. He is a dominant player. Like he is the franchise player of the Houston Rockets. There's no question about that. He knows that. And going someplace else, I mean, James he's an alpha player. I mean, he's I don't know. I mean, he's not the kind of guy that's going to be kind of secondhand. You don't give up what you're going to have to give up for James Harden for him not to come in and be one of your stars. I mean, he's that guy. Whatever we think about him and things that we would like to see differently, he is that guy. But if I'm the Rockets, I from the beginning of the season, I always said the trade deadline should be their goal before as to when they do something. See what you have here. I wish that he was interested in seeing what he had here because he's got some better pieces around him than he's had, I think. And I wish he was open to seeing what this looks like. Like I said, I don't know James Harden like that. We haven't had a conversation about it. But from the outside looking in, he still wants to be out. He's going to come to work and he's going to play because that's who he is. And you got to give him credit for that. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But enough to win with this. Yeah, not enough to win this till this year. They haven't had, listen, especially, and Craig, you and I have had that conversation, especially in the heyday of the Golden State Warriors, before Kevin Durant and definitely with Kevin Durant. I don't think anyone would say that the Rockets team was more talented, right? You would never think that they had the most talent in the West. It was difficult, right, for anybody to get past Golden State. I think they had a shot that one year when they were up, in that 7-game series when they won 65 games in the regular season. and they were up 6 game. What were they? They were up in the series, right? 3-2, was it? And they lost. That was their best shot. And although at the beginning of the season, I don't think anybody would have really picked them, but they had a shot, right? They had a shot then. But this year, they've got better talent. They've got better talent, and he decided to not be here. And so I don't know if he's seen anything that makes him feel differently about the talent. You know, remember, you guys, there was a time when Kobe, and I'm not comparing him to Kobe, let's be really clear, but Kobe wanted to be traded from the Lakers. You guys remember that year? Nora says, I don't think any team will win a championship playing isolation basketball. Now, that's another thing, right? That is something else to really talk about. The style of play was also not a style that has won previously. You know, before Golden State won with how they won, people would have thought you didn't win playing the way they play. And so then they did, and then everybody started to try to shape their teams to be able to compete with Golden State. I called it chasing Golden State in the West. But all of the guys who played in the league and have won, you know, all these, you know, experts that you see that are doing, that are analysts, a common thread is that style of play is not a championship style of play. So, you know, we shall see. Hey, Patrick Trahan, welcome. Happy or not, Harden will still ball on the court. See what he is capable with Harden, Wall, Cousins before making a move. I think, Patrick, I think that's what the Rockets wanted to do. Let's just see what could happen with a healthy John Wall and a healthy DeMarcus Cousins. I mean, they've got more talent around him than they've had, right? Collectively. And so this could really be a good year. But Harden is not going to tank it. I mean, we've seen that from him. He's going to come and he's going to show up and he's going to play. And let me caution you guys, those of you who may have never covered a sports team, the reports about us, you know, them sparring at practice and him throwing a ball at somebody, that's nothing. Like, that stuff happens all the time. Far worse happens than that. It's out of his character. Okay. Clearly, he probably has some frustration because things have not gone the way he would have liked thus far, but it's not that big of a deal, you know? And so if the answer is winning, if, you know, they're 0-2, but I don't even think that can, he's got it bad. Well, you're playing shorthanded and you're playing guys that more than likely wouldn't even get in the game because that's all you have available. You've got, what, 2 of your starters out and your first guy off the bench out because of COVID and because of them having to be in quarantine. So I think the trade deadline should be the goal, and that Rafael Stone and the Rockets organization has to stick with. Alpha dog, what did I say? I don't know what I said, but maybe so. On the court, he is an alpha Virgo. Okay, Chef Allen. He's an alpha here, not in Jersey, not in LA either. Not in Miami. He's a 6 glorified. Are you talking James Harden? Yeah, I mean, I think Craig, here's the thing. I'm sure James doesn't see himself that way, but you're right. That's not going to work. He couldn't be that in Jersey. He definitely couldn't be it in LA. He couldn't be it in Miami. You know, he mentioned Milwaukee being a spot he would like to go. He couldn't be it in Milwaukee. Now he's added Portland to places he'd be willing to go. He couldn't be it in Portland. I mean, where are you going to be? That is a great point. You know, that's a great point. And so it's almost like, dude, settle in. This may be your shot because where are you going to go? The 76ers, you know, first they said, yeah, no, we wouldn't give up Ben Simmons. And it was like, well, yeah, maybe we would. And like, no, we don't want to do that. So the Rockets are holding firm and saying, listen, we're not going to give up this guy for something that's not comparable. And I think they have to do it. They can't make crazy moves like Bill O'Brien made with the Texans. You don't want to be that. Much better talent. And that's what's, you go, guys, it's the same thing Craig said, much better talent on this team. Like, and this is the time he's ready to go. He's ready to bail. I just hope that when they're all on the court, he sees something because he hasn't seen it yet. And that means they haven't had that time to really grow and create the chemistry because they haven't had that much time together, that he may see something that says, you know what, maybe this is a place that I want to be. Charles says there have been a lot of great players in the NBA that were not champions. Many of them, teammates, didn't want to play with him. Harden is what he is. He is what he is. Listen, Charles Barkley never won a championship. There's a lot of, he just is the first person that comes to mind. But you're right. There are a lot of what you would call great players that were not, haven't won championships. I also think there's something about having that championship mindset. And, I'd like to, I'm a Houstonian, right? I was fortunate to cover the 2 championships that this city did win. And I would love to cover them winning a championship again. But there's something different, right? There's been something different about these teams. And when you've had people that came in with that, the Chris Paul was we're going to work hard. We're going to leave it on the floor. We're going to show up. We're going to play defense. I'm going to be in your face about winning. I mean, he was that didn't, eventually that wore thin on James Harden. Russ is that guy. I'm going to leave it all on the floor. People say he plays reckless, but what I would say is he also, he's a competitor, right? He is going to compete at every level. He's going to show up. He's that guy. He's a grind it out. And so the things that are great about him are also the things that you may say, oh my gosh, watching Russell makes me nervous because he turns the ball over a lot. He's not a great shooter, which made him a tough fit, quite frankly, for the offense that the Texans, that this Rockets team ran, but it was not for a lack of competition, right? It was not. Craig says he knows who he really is and he's willing to be who he really is, but not here. He's KD's backup in the real world. He's the alpha here. He knows it. That's what he's telling y'all. Maybe so. The problem is, Craig, ain't a whole lot of teams going to give up what you have to give up for a backup. His number's too high. He's making the alpha male, alpha player on the court money. If I'm going to pay you $42 million a year, you're not coming off my bench. I mean, financially, that's not how it's going to work. So I think that's what it is. And so if he's saying, you're right, I'd like to go and be a part of what KD and Kyrie are doing, and I can be the backup. If he's at that point in his career now, because he has not been before, but you're also in a class in terms of salary that makes it difficult. So where and maybe not. I mean, quite frankly, I haven't done this. I haven't sat down and looked at every NBA team to say what is the best fit. I really haven't. So I don't know if there's a team that makes sense that he could that would have a spot and then may be willing to say, I'm going to pay you like this, because remember, money is going to always be a factor, and it works here, right? It works here. Like when KD went to Golden State, Steph was willing to kind of take a step back. He was still Steph, but it was clear that KD was KD, and it worked because everybody bought in for those years he was there. It's interesting, right? But it's here's the thing that I love about sports. This is what happens in any business. These are the conversations that are had about any business structure and staffs, all of that. So, yeah. Nora says, I think you hit the nail on the head. James Harden does not have a championship mindset. Yeah, I don't think he does either. No, he started, you're right. What I mean is that I think that he's a different person. When he was in OKC, he had not blossomed into the player he is now, right? He came off the bench in OKC. He hadn't won an MVP. He had not been in a spot where he was the leader of a team. He was the face of a team for all these years. So yes, he started that way, but he hasn't been that way since he's been in Houston. So is he willing to go back to that place? Perhaps. And also when he was in OKC, he wasn't the number one. He wasn't he wasn't at the top of the pecking of the payroll. And so I think all of those things make a difference. And so where he is now, he's not the player he was when he was in OKC. So that's what I mean by that. He absolutely did start that way, but he's a different guy now. And I think that's some of what we talked about. If you guys will remember when Russell Westbrook first came to Houston, right? And last summer. And the conversation was, how is this going to work, right? They're both ball dominant. They need to be on the ball. Russell was the face of that franchise in OKC. He's won an MVP. And when he and James played together, James came off the bench. We have to remember that. His role was very different. Now, Russell, fast forward, comes to Houston. They're both former MVPs. They both won MVPs. They were both the face of their franchises. And then you put them on the same court, and how does that work? The dynamics are different. And in terms of the things that, James has, how he's been allowed to kind of navigate his time here is different than what he did in OKC. So that's what I mean by that. He did start as an elite six-man that went in and he was happy. Remember, he cried when he left. I'm just saying. Yeah, I remember all that, but he's still not the same guy. And at $42 million, they're not paying you like a six-man. And so I don't know that a team would be willing to give up what it takes to get you and to pay you that as a six-man. That's what I'm saying. I think it's different. I think he has blossomed into something beyond a six-man. And if he still is just that, that's a tight fit for organizations trying to move him. And I don't think, Craig, from just my limited interaction with him, covering him these past several years, that he want to be a six-man. I don't think he sees himself as that anymore. So I just think it's going to be interesting to follow, to see what comes of it and what they are able to do. And I don't know if he cried because he didn't want to leave. I think he really wanted to leave. I think he may have cried about the opportunity he had before him. I had a chance to, I remember the day that the Rockets announced the signing and they had this big press conference, and I was actually sitting next to his mother, and the guy that he was then, obviously 8 years ago, hopefully you would grow, right? Hopefully I'm not the same person. I know that I'm not, that I was 8 years ago, but he's a very different person, just in terms of confidence, in terms of, I can't speak to his character, but in terms of just confidence and his makeup and really how he has blossomed on the floor. I think he's grown. I don't think he would have ever been an MVP as a six-man. But anyway, I just think it's interesting to talk about in regards to if and when he's traded. What do you mean? Let me go back. Oh, you said they're going to have to come close in terms of salary, that they have to match up with what he's making. Yeah, in order to make a deal work, they're going to have to come up with that. So they're going to have to move, the salary. They're going to have to put together a package either on a two-team deal or a multi-team deal that financially makes sense. And so, a player that is, there are not a lot of players that are making what he's making. He is at the upper echelon. He's a supermax player. And so, getting the deal done, that does also create some challenges in terms of financially, but that's what they pay those GMs for. In Golden State, you saw the exhibit. In Golden State, you saw the humility, less ego to achieve championship. And those are all different kind of players. Kevin Durant left, people gave him a lot of crap about leaving OKC. Remember, they were ahead in the series the year before in the Western Conference Finals. Was the Western Conference Finals, and they lost that series. So the thought was the OKC was really close to pushing Golden State and the winning, and that he basically jumped ship because he wanted to go to a team that was winning. He was a free agent, so he had the ability to do that. It wasn't about a trade. So he picked up his ball and went to Golden State, and he got what he wanted. He's an NBA champion now. And so now he's left there and gone to New Jersey and is teamed up with Kyrie rather, and is going to try to do it again. So, but you have to be able to do some of that, less ego. And are you willing to, what does team mean to you? What does it look like? And is it about more than you? LeBron is a perfect example of a player with a championship mindset. He has won a championship with 3 different teams. He's a player that makes other players around him better. Yeah, I know a lot of people aren't big on LeBron. I'm not one of those people. I've just seen, I admire the way he plays, and I admire what he does off the field, off the court, right? I see the work he's done, and I appreciate that about him. But, LeBron works on himself year round. I'm told he spends close to $1 million a year on his body in terms of, diet and training and, regular massages and all those things that go in. He invests in, he is his commodity, and he invests in it heavily. And it is played off for somebody to be in the league as long as he has and still play at the level where he's able to play. So, he has done that. It has worked for him. Craig says wherever he goes, he would start, and then after that, it's all rotation. Yeah, I just, does anybody have a thought of what team that would be in terms of, one, what makes the most sense for James Harden to be brought in? And then 2, what's the team that makes sense in terms of what they have to give up? Because those are the 2 things that I think have to end up working, right? On the one side, the team that says, okay, if we put James Harden in this mix, it's a fit and we could win a chip, right? And on the other side, for the Rockets, they have enough to give to us where we would give up a former MVP and someone we've invested in so heavily. I think that's interesting. That's an interesting conversation. And if any of you have thoughts about it, I would love to hear it. Chef says in Golden State, you saw them exhibit, okay, yeah, I said that one. Humility and less ego in the outcome of champions. Yeah. So yeah, Craig is, we talked about this back then. When he left going to Golden State, that was the easy answer. That was the easy out, rather. I'm not gonna say the easy answer because he was so close. He was so close. It's like, what happens if he stayed with that team that they had in place and pushed Golden State the next year? Or what happened if he had really just even shown up differently? Do you guys remember that series? I remember that series like it was played last summer. I remember them being ahead. I remember him missing some shots, right? I just remember, not saying it was his fault, but I remember him leaving some stuff, not leaving it all on the court and thinking, man, they were in it. They should have won that series. And then in the offseason, he checked out. He was like, I'm out. I'm going to play with them. It removes some pressure. Obviously, you go and join forces with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Iguodala, and the list, goes on because that team is really talented. And you throw in a Kevin Durant, like you couldn't get past them in the West, right? You just could not do it. Oh, James, see, there you go. You say he invests too in the strip club. So just be clear, he said last week he was not at a strip club. He was just at a function supporting his homegirl who was becoming a boss. He said it was not a strip club. It was just a club. So, yeah. Hey, good morning, Zena Garrison. She said he is not a leader. Does not matter where he goes. Now, you know what? That's interesting. Not interesting, but I tend to, we are who we are. And because we are put in a different environment, it doesn't change who we are. Just will that fit someplace else? And I know a lot of people in Houston are saying, yeah, he can play. He's got a lot of talent, but let him go be that someplace else. So Zena and I have this conversation all the time about leadership and who you are. Listen, I didn't create this saying, but it is one that I have attached to a lot that I'm doing. How you do anything is how you do everything, right? How you do anything is how you do everything. And so how you show up matters. What are you doing off the court? It's going to impact what you do on the court. That's just a matter of it. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing this team actually a few games in, right? I don't expect on Thursday night we're going to get a good sense of what this Rocket team can be, especially because it'll be their first time playing collectively. Everybody on the court with John Wall and Boogie Cousins and Kenyon Martin, who may not be back yet because he was the one who actually had COVID. Eric Gordon. I think it'll be interesting to see how well they can play, and I look forward to that. Before we get out of here today, one of the things I said we were going to talk about, and I wanted to bring it up, and it's a conversation we'll have moving forward, is about race and media. And here's what I mean. So last week, the Kansas City Star, one of the biggest papers in the Midwest, said, listen, you know what? We apologize to Black people. I mean, this is my Kim Davis version of what they wrote, what they said. We have not been fair and equitable in how we've covered you in terms of the stories we've told and how we portrayed you and your community, and we're sorry. Like, that's a real watered down version. But basically they said, listen, we've been, we have failed in this respect, and we owe you an apology. 140 years, we go back and we look at how we've covered the community, Black people, and we should have done better, right? We should have done better. And they should have. And so I did a show with Shaletta Bundridge's show in Minnesota over the weekend, and we talked about this. And she's like, you just get mad. And you go, yeah, you're mad I'm mad that it happens. And here's what concerns me. That there've only been 2 papers that have come out and said it, right? A few months ago, I think it's back in September, the LA Times did this big series of basically the same thing, how we have not done a good job. And they didn't just say specifically Black people, they said minorities. So they talked about where they've fallen short, but they also went a step further than the Kansas City Star. They said, and this is what we're doing about it in terms of having different people on our editorial board and in the editorial process in terms of who decides the stories and how they're told. So I thought, okay, that was LA Times in September. Now we have the Kansas City Star a few months later. What I would say is that every newspaper, every metropolitan paper, every daily paper, right, major paper, and every TV station should be issuing the same apologies because they've not done a good job. When you see magazine covers or pictures in a paper where you see a Black person and they look darker, the shades, I'm not talking about their skin color, I'm talking about the way that they shade those images. Why it's so important, why is it so important how we're covered is because there's a few reasons. One, it shapes our humanity, how others see our humanity, right? We wonder, like, why do people think nothing of shooting, Black people? Why is it not as it offend others, some people more? Because our humanity is often diminished in the places that people get their information. That's a problem. The other thing is, this is where history books are, this is where history is written from media accounts and stories. Those are the things that determine the stories that are told in history books for years to come. So it is important and it's necessary that the stories and images and the way that we're depicted and the stories that are told, that a better job is done. And it's not enough for just the Kansas City Star and the LA Times to say, we've been screwing up, we've gotten this wrong. The LA Times has put a plan in place to say, this is what we're doing in terms of management and leadership. The Kansas City Star just said, I am sorry. That is that. No, and yeah, it is since the Negro League story, Chef Allen, but I don't think that's why. I don't know why they decided. I don't think it took that, but it is in general, not just sports, it is news in general in terms of how they've covered the Black community, Black people, Black businesses, Black families, and not covered us like we are regular people, a part of the community. At least they're finally admitted it, but it's 2020. You're right. So admitting it is the first step. Now you got to do something about it, right? You've got to do something about it. What are you doing differently? And I think that's what we have to do. We've got to hold organizations accountable. We talk about holding companies accountable for how they show up for us. We've got to hold media outlets accountable as well, because they're telling the stories. And if there's not the right kind of representation, and it's not enough to just say, I have a Black person, right? I'm gonna remind everybody that's listening, Daniel Cameron is a Black man in Kentucky, and he's the AG, remember, that basically said that no harm, no foul with Breonna Taylor. So I'm not just in it, they've got to do better. So there's a lot to talk about for that. And Zena says, on that note, race and media, when is your book coming out as a book? Okay, Zena, you're right. Same thing. But I'm working on it. So my goal is January, before the end of January. So thank you for that. Send him to the Washington Generals. All right, Craig's got something. So Craig says, you send James to a bad team with high draft picks. You have your max level talent guys in Wall, Woods, and Boogie. You have to pay on various high levels. You use from trading James to gain cheap, young, high lottery pick level talent. Put that around Wall, Woods, Boogie, and Eric Gordon. That may be a bit of what they're looking to do, Craig. They've got to be thinking about something that is some creativity, right? Some creativity is going to be required. Every aspect of America must be held accountable. You're right. You are absolutely right, Charles. I'm buying the book. I'm working on it. I'm gonna get it done. I know Craig is somewhere saying he's been telling me that forever. But I have to tell you, Craig is, I appreciate it, Freddie. Do not go for the skin color game age. Exactly. It's more than that. He is a prime example, he's a prime example. Harden stays in Houston, leaves next year. You think so, Nicole? So here's the deal. Harden's got 2 years up on his contract and an option for a third, and they're all guaranteed. This year is a little under, I said 42, it's 41 and some change. Next year, I believe he is at 43 or higher, maybe closer to 44. And in the third year, it's $47 million. So, he could stay. The Rockets really do have the leverage. Here's what's different about the NBA than the NFL. If you don't play, say if he would have sit out, he's like, I got a bunch of money. I don't want to play for them. I'm going to leave the 42 million, the 41 and change on the table. I don't need it. When he were to come at the beginning of next season, his rights would still belong to the Rockets. He would still have 2 years and an optional third on his contract. It doesn't change anything. So, this is, this is the Rockets' best chance, right? Because now you're not operating from desperation. This is the best year. And this is, if they're going to move him, you got to move him now. You move him before the trade deadline is what I think, because it does give you your best leverage. You have your title. Is it titled The Underground Railroad to God? No, that's not the title of my book. So good luck, though. You're addressing it. Good luck with you on your book as well. And good point. Yeah. Craig says no trade leverage next year, none. Absolutely. No trade leverage. Now is when they have the leverage. You think about it. If teams think that you're desperate, that you need to do something, they're not going to offer you as much, right? And you want to get the best out of you, because you're not really saying we're in the rebuilding mode. They went out and got some pieces. They're betting on Boogie and Wall being healthy. And let me tell you something. I don't know if you've seen them yet, but I like Christian Wood. I mean, it's early. I like what I see from him. And, that kid can play. And they got some young, Jay Sean Tate, like what he can do. Daniel House hopefully continues to grow. That kid's got some talent, and hopefully his whoopsie from the bubble is something that will make him say, "Yeah, I don't want to do that again." And so it's all about growth and finding. Steven Silas is obviously the right guy for this team right now. He is, and the players seem to say good things about him, how he communicates, and also. John Lucas. I mean, he the guy that was a finalist for the job he ended up getting. You never see that happening. Now, granted, Lucas has some history with his family. He said he's known Lucas most of his life, so he's good having Lucas right next to him. So I look forward to seeing what this team can do. I'm a lot more optimistic about this team right now than about the Texans team. But then again, they will be a very different team, hopefully. In 2021. And finally, Charles said Wood has some talent. He most definitely does. Wood has some talent, and I look forward to seeing what he can do with it. All right, I've gone over just a few minutes today. Thank you guys for being a part of Chalk Talk. Happy Kwanzaa. Today is Ujama, is the principal of today, which is for cooperative economics. And I encourage you to practice that, right? Also, Happy New Year. I may not see you guys in this space until 2021. I'll pop on and do a couple short videos. I'm doing more in terms of content creation. But thank you. I appreciate you guys so much for continuing to roll with me here on Chalk Talk. Share the video if you will. And follow me on my platforms, Instagram and Twitter. I'm Kim.Y.Davis on Instagram and Kim Y. Davis on Twitter. Have a great week. Be safe out there in those streets. Remember to wear your mask. Christian Wood, I wish the Pelicans. Man, listen, we're not talking about those New Orleans Pelicans on this show. Not today. Not as we end this 2020 Chalk Talk season. Thank you so much, Charles. I appreciate it. Craig says blacks in the media get selfish when they get opportunities and basically become cowards, afraid to complain, afraid to fight, just happy to have credentials, happy to be in the room. That's my phrase. So we don't advance broadly enough to see other black people ascend. And sadly, there's a lot to that. And Craig and I have these conversations often. I will tell you as we get ready to get out of here that when I asked the question of Jack Easter B about the Texans and their lack of diversity, and specifically lack of black people on the executive team, on the communications department, and on the broadcast team, except for former players, my relationship with the Houston Texans changed. Not that we were ever real super tight, but I have been treated very differently since then. But if I don't ask the question, who's going to? So if it means that I have less access, I feel like I'm not living the responsibility of sitting in this seat and doing what I do. That's not why I started my own platform. It gives me the freedom to ask the tough questions, the questions that maybe other people are not asking because, they can call your editor or your news director and say, don't have Kim here or don't have her ask those questions. I am my news director and my editor. So with that, Charles says, yeah, every profession, unfortunately. Yeah, every profession. So listen, Ujama, cooperative economics, we got to do better. And I think if you're part of the Chalk Talk family, you get it and we will do better. So you guys be safe, wear your mask, practice social distancing, forget about those parties and those nightclubs, sit your behind down somewhere. And I will see you in 2021. All right. I know, right? Got to stay independent. You're right about that, Craig. All right, everybody. See you next time. Have a great week and make sure that you take care of yourself. Do something kind for you and something kind for somebody else. Craig, 3:00. We got to talk. All right. Talk to you guys soon.